Welcome to the Workology Podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrill, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
Even before the pandemic, it was a challenge to shop and learn about HR technology and services. COVID throws another wrinkle into things, even with conferences and events opening up in the near future. At Workology, we reach 700,000, yes, 700K, HR and workplace leaders every month with our newsletter, podcasts, and online resources at Workology.com. I've been getting requests from many of you asking for ways to connect with different companies that will give you an opportunity to research the organization and learn about them before signing up for a demo or answering their phone or email. This interview is part of a new series called HR Tech Insights for the Workology Podcast, and it's sponsored by Upskill HR and ACE the HR exam. It's an opportunity for you, the HR leader, to quickly learn about different companies, their solutions, the company sizes and verticals they serve, and a quick case study of the problems they solve. Think of it as if you're walking the expo floor, but without the free swag and cocktails. The good news is there's no travel or expense involved. Each episode in the HR Tech Insights series features 3 7 to 10 minute interviews with different HR tech and service providers. Let's get started with this episode, shall we? Our first interview is with Andreas Blank. He is the CEO and co-founder of Fetcher, a full-service recruiting automation platform that helps hundreds of companies hire diverse and top talent faster. He was previously the founder and COO of Pixable, a consumer mobile company with over 5 million users that sold to Singtel for $30 million in less than 3 years. Andreas started Pixable while he was pursuing his MBA at MIT, and before moving to Boston, Andreas started 3 companies in his home country, Venezuela. Hi, Andreas. Welcome to the Workology Podcast.
Hi, Jessica. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you. Can you tell us a little bit about Fetcher and the problem that you solve for human capital leaders?
So Fetcher is a full-service recruiting automation platform that allows companies of any size to level up their recruiting processes to compete with companies with more resources than them. So as you can imagine, there's many recruiting teams that are understaffed and overworked. And the idea of what Fetcher does is that we automate your whole top of the funnel process so your team can focus more on engaging with candidates instead of trying to be all day online trying to find these people. What's also very special about Fetcher is that we not only automate the sourcing process, we also have a CRM a component to our product. So you're not only able to fill the top of your funnel, but you're able to nurture candidates as you go.
I love that. You guys do so many different things, which is really amazing. And it's kind of all in one single place. So you don't have to go to 15 places and try to log in.
Yeah, and that's one of the issues that we hear a lot from our clients is that recruiting is becoming harder and harder. So people have to get more and more products. And what Fetcher is really trying to do is to simplify people's lives by trying to have a lot of solutions in one.
What company size or vertical do you find yourself helping customers in most?
Yeah, so I would say that most of the companies that we work with are growing pretty fast. When we started working, we used to work with pretty small companies that sometimes they had 1 recruiters or none. But over time, we've expanded pretty heavily in the mid-market. And now we're starting to work with a lot of enterprise clients. And the type of roles that we can do, because this is sourcing, it really kind of can grab almost all type of knowledge workers. And most people end up using us for engineering hires, marketing, sales, strategy, and also a lot of for their diversity initiatives as well.
I love that. Those really hard to fill roles that you always seem to need immediately. You can kind of build the funnel and the sourcing and the automation so that hopefully I'm just served up qualified candidates right to me, and then I can start qualifying them better.
That's right. We try to tell people that they can even go on vacation, and when they come back, they'll have a pipeline of a qualified and interested candidate waiting for them.
Can you talk a little bit about maybe a recent case study or an example of how you've helped your customers with maybe this automation or sourcing technology that you guys have at your disposal?
Yeah, I would love to. In fact, like if it's possible, I'll chat quickly about three different clients that we work with, because I think that their cases are very different, but also very relevant for your listeners. So the first client that I'm really excited to talk about is called Devo. And Devo is a cloud-based security analytics platform. They were trying to grow their team a fivefold in the next 2 years. And they started working with us a little bit less than a year ago, and they've been able to really do over 100 hires, and without really having to noticeably grow their sourcing team. And what's been really exciting is that it's not only that they've been able to not have to add a lot of resources to fill the top of the funnel, is that their own team is able to spend a lot of time on the candidate experience. So instead of being stressed about building that funnel, they can really focus on having a very thoughtful recruiting process. In fact, one of the candidates that they were really excited about was a Yankees fan. And let's not hold that against them. And when they were sending an offer, they actually were able to send like a whole kit around the Yankees. And that was like one of the things that got them really excited. So being able for recruiters to spend more time in the candidate experience, which is usually what excites them, is something that it really is relevant for them. Another company that we're really excited to chat is called Osudio. And Osudio is actually based in the Netherlands, and they're like a marketing digital agency. The challenge that Osudio was facing is that now that we're in COVID, people started to think about hiring more internationally in places where they haven't hired before. Usually, Osudio was able to rely on staffing agencies that had that local knowledge. But now that they were going all over the place, they didn't have that relationships to be able to hit the ground running. And what's really exciting about Fetcher is that because we can source in an automated way, they were able to really go and search in a lot of locations that they weren't able to find before. And in less than 3 months, they were able to find 2 hires on the business development side that were really hard for them, and they were really struggling to find. And lastly, I'll talk really quickly about a company called Frame.io. Frame.io is a very high growth company that also does like marketing technology. And where we've been able to help Frame a lot is hiring diverse talent. As you can imagine, when it comes to hiring tech talent, it's really hard to find not only people who are really they're qualified, but even harder if they're diverse. And Frame is using us exclusively to look at underrepresented minorities where they didn't have the volume. And we've been able to hire over 10 people in a very short period of time.
Tell me more about some specific ways that you've impacted the business. And I'm thinking through like maybe with recruiting automation or one of those other areas.
Absolutely. Well, the first time is that for people who are recruiters, there's 2 things that have been really helpful for them. The first one is that they can go back to doing the type of work that they really love doing, which is really interacting with either qualified candidates or their own teammates to make sure who are they looking for. So we've been able to really reduce the time that they spend sourcing, and that time they're able to use it for building better candidate relationships. The other thing for organizations as a whole, we've been able to really reduce the time to hire. As you can imagine, especially for revenue producing roles, being able to hire 1 or 2 months quicker than they expect can really move the needle in the performance of the organization. So this is something that we're super proud about how quickly we're able to not only get people started with Fetcher, but also how they can reduce the time to hire. And also, like, what's something that we're really excited about is being able to give a product that really resonates with teams when it comes to AI and automation. Like we hear a lot about companies looking for an AI solution, but then they feel that they're very overwhelmed when they use it. So being able to present a one solution that can really put everything in one place has been able to help them reduce the budget that they use for software, and at the same time reduce the amount of training that they have to do to be able to use a product properly.
Hire faster, lower costs. I think it sounds like something that most recruiting and TA teams are looking for right now. I know that our listeners would love to learn more about the work that you guys are doing at Fetcher, where can people go to connect with you?
Yeah, you can find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, we're at Fetcher AI, and on Facebook, you can look for Fetcher. And if you want to find me, you can find me at Andres Blanc on Twitter and also LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. Really a pleasure being here.
Our next interview is with Scott Bisesar. He's the founder and CEO of ChangeView. He's a 20-plus year leader in the global change implementation space. Scott is the drive behind ChangeView's Success Factors Analytics database, an automated change platform proven to radically improve implementation success rates. Hi, Scott. Welcome to the Workology Podcast.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks for inviting us.
Can you tell us a little bit about ChangeView and the problem you solve for human capital leaders?
Absolutely. In a nutshell, ChangeView brings together change expertise and technology to implement change more successfully, more consistently for organizations. And essentially, we solve two big challenges for human capital leaders. First is we solve the replication and scalability issue. In other words, we enable digitalization and automation of your change. And the second is we link change needs to metrics that directly contribute to successful change through our Success Factors database. So those are the two big pieces. And let me just break them down a little bit. On the first point, the scalability and automation piece is a kind of an obvious one. We enable rapid onboarding of data into a platform that the client then defines. And as maybe you're familiar with, but many of your listeners will be, change tends to be a massive data collection and recollection and re-managing type of an issue. So we enable that and simplify that. On the second point, I think that's the more interesting one for your listeners. The Success Factors database is a database that we constructed. We have now about 10,000 man-years of experienced change practitioners that have gone through it. And what essentially it does is it has created and ranked a number of success factors that are linked to successful change. So we've had that vetted, and the big bonus for clients is that they add their data into our database, which means the more usage that they bring to the platform, the more data gets collected, the more they're able to establish their own unique change risk profile and change mitigation actions. So as they're going, their customization ability is highly enabled, and they create their own database. And from that, you can basically get two things. One is more of the factors that enable success, so you identify them early and you can get consistency around them. And the second is the gaps where you're missing elements become your development areas. So it's a two-in-one type of a thing. You're actually doing change as you go on the fly, but you're also developing an insight into your development areas.
That's great. Change management is such a huge area for organizations and particularly HR. What company size and or vertical do you guys find yourself helping customers in most?
Yeah, great question. Unfortunately, I don't have the obvious answer, which is that you're only good in certain cases. ChangeView has applications where the ROI is highest in larger organizations, and obviously that's related to the scale. So above 10 locations or 1,000 people, you're going to get serious returns starting to come in just through the scale and the ability to do a lot of things simply one time as opposed to several. So that case is clear. The other piece, though, is the platform actually is helpful on one-off cases. So you can have one team. We've had that happen. One team comes in, wants to use the platform, rents one particular application, and uses that productively. So again, depends on your situation. In terms of industries, we're industry agnostic. So we play in the traditional sectors of healthcare, the large ones, right? Healthcare, utilities, manufacturing, financial services, high tech. Those are all areas that we play in. We're also increasingly going into government organizations internationally, so not just locally in North America. And we have had a larger not-for-profit also that we've worked with recently that has found value in it. So it's got quite a bit of applicability across industry sectors and company sizes.
I love that. And I love that really it doesn't matter. Like change happens everywhere, and the ability to improve change and change implementation, doesn't matter if you're 5 employees or 500,000. So that's fantastic. I wanted to ask you if you could share a recent case study or example of maybe how you've helped your customers in this area.
Yes, I'm going to give you a generic example. We have a lot of sort of individualized or specialty situations, but the typical situation is a team or organization that is itself in the midst of multiple changes, and that's where most organizations and most teams find themselves these days. So, as an example, a recent one we had was a global function doing a rollout of a transformation for that function, and while other functions or business units were also enabling and putting in place implementation initiatives. So, typical situations, quite convoluted, stakeholders are all mixed up, right? So they were faced with the need to get going quickly, to create common language, and most critically, to engage with different stakeholder groups while maintaining a coherent and consistent story, even though that story, of course, is going to change and modify as time goes on. What we did is, using our change risk platform, we were able to rapidly align and onboard the project team. So we started with the PMO office with very little disruption. So that's the nice thing about the platform, is there's very little off time on training that you do. It's all on the go, on the fly while you're working. So that's a feature that we can discuss a little bit later. And then in terms of results, what does it show up like? So I'm just going to jump to the end. So we onboarded with them, we brought them online, we got their leadership teams by initiative into the ChangeView platform. And the results after we got going were that the approach delivered their benefits. They had some pretty big numbers, upwards of 50 million in expected flow-through profits to the bottom line. We made them inside the time window. And just to give you the major reasons why, because we obviously, with all our clients, are doing feedback sessions to figure out whether things are working. We were, from their perspective, we enabled their key sponsors, so this is now the top decision maker group, to align across not just an initiative, but across the portfolio of initiatives. And that was what helped or enabled them to make better decisions. They were able to then pace individual initiative rollouts specifically. They therefore ended up with less bottlenecks and ultimately were more effective on delivery with less pain. So that was enabled through our digital platform by automating and standardizing the data gathering process, and then enabling the scale and the replication of the change by the leaders of the individual initiatives to then roll out consistently with their specific stakeholder groups.
That's amazing. I feel like you've answered my next question, which is, tell me about specific ways you've impacted the business. Like, you're unifying the organization across all verticals or areas, and you're making change happen faster, it's more consistent, and you're doing the prep work at the beginning and the follow-up at the end.
You've answered. You've taken the words right out of my mouth. So I was using client language, right, in my last answer. I guess I'll use my language now, Jessica. I would say there's three pieces that I would point to that are specific ways we impact the business. One is the advantages that come from digitalizing the change. Right, so that's the automation, onboarding your data. Second is the ability to enable business people to become good at change quickly because of the lack of change-specific skills that you need. So we use a lot of business-oriented language, and we try and bring the change-specific stuff at least out enough that it doesn't cause a problem. And third, our platform enables scale and replication in a controlled way, which is the point that you were mentioning earlier, right? And just to give you a bit of, I grabbed a couple of quotes for this section. I'm just going to read them off to you really quickly. Here's some quotes from some recent engagements. You dramatically enabled us to reduce change implementation risk in people's actions and behaviors. That was one. Second was, we have more real-time data and thus control over the change process and the adjustments required. And then a third quote was, we rapidly grew our confidence through the success factors database and analytics that are easy to understand, apply, and use. So those were just to give a flavor of what the clients were expecting, because everybody's going to be a bit different, right? But that summarizes it.
Well, I love it. I love learning and learning more about what you're doing at ChangeView. And I know our listeners are probably like, oh my gosh, this sounds awesome. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more about you and ChangeView?
Absolutely. We're on the traditional social media platforms. You can look us up by typing in ChangeView. That's change with the V and the U added at the end. On Twitter, so we have a Twitter account where our posts are reposted. You can follow us on LinkedIn. Same thing. There's a ChangeView LinkedIn page where, again, you can find our posts that we make regularly. Our thought leadership blog on successful change is available on our changeview.com site. So you can look up and you'll see it very clearly in the menu where the blog is. You can join there. And of course, you can simply drop us an email at hello@changeview.com, and we can be happy to set up a quick meeting and have a chat. So hopefully that covers it.
Yes. And thank you, Scott, for taking the time to talk with us and introduce us to ChangeView.
You're welcome, Jessica. Thank you so much for having us.
You are listening to the Workology Podcast, sponsored by Upskill HR and ACE the HR Exam. This episode is part of our HR Tech Insights series on the Workology Podcast, where we connect you with 3 different HR tech and/or service providers in a single episode. Personal and professional development is essential for successful HR leaders. Join Upskill HR to access live training, community, and over 100 on-demand courses for the dynamic leader. HR Restart credits available. Visit upskillhr.com for more. Our last and final interview for this episode is with Ben Herman. Ben is the founder and CEO of Canvas, the diversity recruiting platform that companies like Lyft, Headspace, Airbnb, and Dropbox use to understand the diversity of their recruiting pipeline, source underrepresented talent, and measure the ROI of their recruiting diversity initiatives. Ben grew up in London, dropped out of high school, and became a recruiter, and was running his own agency by the time he was 21. After growing the company to 15 people and $11 million in annual revenue, he realized that there must be a better way to match great companies with great people, and he started Canvas. Hi, Ben. Welcome to the Workology Podcast. Can you tell me a little bit about Canvas and the problem you solve for human capital leaders?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jess. It's great to be here. The problem we're solving is really about engaging and hiring diverse talent across your company. But what we call diverse talent is way beyond just the ethnicity and gender of an individual. But really, that's what we're helping companies solve.
I love that. And I feel like it's so timely because diversity, equity, inclusion is really top of mind for so many HR, recruiting, and workplace leaders. What company size and or vertical do you guys find yourself helping customers in the most?
Yeah, we get this question a lot. And the truth is, it really depends on how much the company is willing to walk the walk, relevant to the promises that they've made when it comes to diversity. And so if a company is really committed to removing biases in the process, understanding the data, sourcing, hiring more diverse talent, like we can help them regardless if they're 100 people or whether they're, Googles of the world. And we do work, with both Amazon and Google, but we also work with, much smaller startups, like NerdWallet, Plaid, etc.
A wide variety of companies and names that you're mentioning. Can you share a recent case study or example of how you've helped one of your customers?
Yeah, there's 2 that come to mind, but I'll take one of them as there's more numbers that go with it. The case study that always sticks out to me is with Lyft, the transportation company. Prior to working with us, we started working with them in 2019, I believe it was. They did a lot of initiatives with HBCUs, different, diverse organization, nonprofits, like, Code 2040 or Afrotech, Techeria, etc. And they spent, I believe it was upwards of 7 figures on these initiatives to ultimately try and hire more talent from kind of Black, Hispanic, Latinx like backgrounds. And they really didn't succeed here. I believe, they hired a couple of people with these backgrounds across their, product engineering and design orgs. And then with our platform, I believe in their first 6 months of utilizing the platform, I think they hired over 32 people from underrepresented groups, specifically diverse ethnicities. And this to them, meant saving what was hundreds of thousands of dollars, and also giving more opportunity to people who actually expressed interest in their company that they couldn't otherwise know their ethnicity prior to using our platform.
This is fantastic. I feel like tech companies are everyone should be thinking about DEI efforts, but particular tech companies are starting to publish annual reports and information. And so you're offering a real success story of how you can quickly and cost effectively add more diverse talent to your organization.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you have any other specific ways that you have impacted the business and the companies that you've worked with?
Yeah, for sure. It somewhat depends on a company's strategy, right? In how they plan to engage, interact, and ultimately, hire talent. And really, our solution is customizable to them. And so it's less about what their strategy is, but more about how we build a platform that's customizable and malleable to their specific strategy and style. As, let's be honest, every company recruits differently. And so the way that we think about it is that there's like 4 core parts of the platform. One is about community. And so that's about building ways to interact and engage with talent all year round through talent communities. The other is around virtual events. And so they can brand, manage, understand the data like for all of their events like in our platform. And that's integrated and works with Zoom directly. And then there's the inbound sourcing. And so that's managing all of the talent that previously exists in your internal systems. And so we help enrich that data, give them what is, self-reported data to allow them to understand the diversity of their, applicants, and automate that process for them. And then the other part is really the outbound sourcing, which is part of the inbound sourcing. So sourcing encompasses inbound and outbound, and the outbound is what we're creating as the first shared talent marketplace of candidates. And the reason that this, is unique is it's taking all applicants that are rejected or not of interest or, whatever reasons to other companies and allowing our other partners to actually see this talent. And we believe this is important as we're no longer about the war of talent. And we believe it's about coming together to give more accessibility to both companies and candidates. And then the final piece is analytics. And so, it's end to end, it's fully, customizable, and allows you to understand like each part of the process and what the data looks like. And actually you can go into that data much further because it's self-reported, allowing, us to be able to give you that firsthand.
Perfect. Well, Ben, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us about Canvas. And I know that our listeners would love to learn more about you and the work that you guys are doing at Canvas. Where can people go to connect with you?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you for having me here. It's great to talk. LinkedIn's really the best. We're pretty active on there, but, also feel free to ping me and email me at ben@canvas.com.
I'm all about arming HR and workplace leaders with resources and information to help them support and elevate their organizations. That includes finding great HR tech and service providers. You can visit the show notes of this episode of the Workology Podcast. Go to workology.com, and I will be including each person we've talked to today's LinkedIn profile and their company information. Feel free to reach out to them directly. Make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Workology Podcast. This episode is part of our HR Tech Insights series and is sponsored by Upskill HR and Ace the HR Exam. Are you loving the Workology Podcast? Our Workology community reaches over 600,000 HR leaders every single month. Want to be a sponsor? Reach out to us at workology.com/advertising.